Hello everyone, I'm Spiritualist, Psychic, and Astrologer Sette. Thank you once again for dedicating this time and allowing me the opportunity to share with you my higher self's knowing of the astrological and spiritual influences which are being offered to humanity during the month of October 2016. We're already on the cusp of October. Today is September 29th, and we actually have a new moon on September 30th. This is a black moon. It's considered a black moon because it's the second new moon during the month of September. And our new moon on September 30th is in the sign of Libra. We have the sun and moon in the sign of Libra, and right next to the sun and moon we have the planet Jupiter. Jupiter is the planet of abundance. Whatever Jupiter touches, Jupiter expands upon. On September 9th, Jupiter moved into the sign of Libra, and it will remain in Libra until about October 10th of 2017. So Jupiter generally stays in a sign for about a year, 12 to 13 months. And as Jupiter transits the sign of Libra, Libra is a sign that is most associated with peace and love. And, just look at what's happening in the world right now, how we're really not seeing peace and love being demonstrated out in our world. And as I've illustrated many times, that because fear and dark energy that is present in the world is almost fearful of losing its grip on humanity, that inadvertently the collective of humanity miscreates experiences that seem to be so horrific out in the world. And really what's happening, we're just being given the opportunity to recognize that first and foremost we need to establish and create peace within ourselves, peacefulness and love within ourselves. So at this new moon on September 30th, we are certainly being offered the opportunity to establish and create the peace within ourself. Libra is also the sign of balance. It's represented by the scales. We are being encouraged to recognize that we absolutely need to establish and continually create and stay in a place of balance. Keep things in our lives very much balanced, very much grounded. So with the presence of Jupiter to the sun and moon at the sign of this, at the time of this new moon, we are so being encouraged that is so very necessary to create the peacefulness within ourselves. Libra is also the sign of love. Libra is ruled by the planet of love, Venus. So the establishment of peace and love, creating peace and love first and foremost within ourselves, is how we will generate that peace and love to the outer world. Libra also connects with the artist, the musician, so it also connects with creativity. A few months ago I spoke of how the sign Leo connects with creativity, and as I've said, when we allow ourselves to express ourselves creatively, we connect with divinity, and when we connect with divinity, we allow ourselves to demonstrate our creativity. I'm emphasizing the creativity as well because when we allow ourselves to be very, very peaceful, we have the experience of a heightened sense of creativity, and we allow ourselves to demonstrate that creativity in very positive and very productive ways. The placement of the new moon in the chart that is cast for the United States highlights the sector of the chart, which is the sixth house. It's that sector of the chart that deals with our service to humanity. And why I am emphasizing that is because when we allow ourselves to remain peaceful in a place of love and experience that heightened sense of creativity that connects us with our connection to divinity, we will recognize very clearly our path, our purpose, and our service to humanity. So perhaps one of the goals that you can establish for yourself at this time, at this new moon, in addition to the peacefulness and the love and the creativity, is to allow yourself to recognize whatever it is that might be your path and your purpose. Many times, whatever it is that we are very passionate about in our lives, that passion is directly related and connecting to our path and purpose. And many times, because of fear, we don't allow ourselves to really connect with that knowing and those experiences. We have been given the opportunity for quite some time now to release any deep-seated fears, and that release of fears was amplified at the time of the lunar eclipse on September 16th, the lunar eclipse full moon, because it was in that sign of Pisces, and it was somewhat of a late degree in Pisces. It did trigger the release of fear, and whenever something is released, we will observe it possibly and potentially manifesting in our outer consciousness. And many times we experience the error thinking, and we generate too much energy to the fear instead of allowing ourselves to recognize that we are being given that opportunity to acknowledge that fear and to release it, not necessarily offering it power. It's more of a release. And once we release that, then we make the most of the experience. The error that we embark upon many times is that we just give too much energy to the fear. Instead of releasing it, we inadvertently reinforce it. So if you're finding yourself, have these experiences of fears coming to the surface, allow yourself to observe them, to reflect upon them, and to lovingly release them. Remember, this new moon on September 30th, it's a time for us to establish peacefulness within ourselves. Peace, love, balance, creativity. These are all the heightened potentials of that sign of Libra. And as I referenced to a few moments ago, Libra is the sign of balance. And one of the great balances that are lovingly trying to be established in the outside world right now is the balance between the male and the female energy, the masculine and the feminine. For many years, for perhaps even eons of time, the masculine male energy has been a dominant force in the outer world. And since about 2004, and it had to do, you may remember at that time, there was a unique phenomenon regarding the transit of Venus as it passed over the sun. It was similar to an eclipse, although it wouldn't appear as an eclipse, but that Venus transit going over the sun, which happened in 2004, and again it happened 8 years later in 2012, that cycle of experience, just to keep it very simple, began the reestablishment of the balance of the feminine energy in the outer world. And you know, right now, it's no accident how we are seeing the potential candidates of the presidential race in the United States to be a man and a woman. And just look at the conflicts that are being created between the two. And anyone who's been following that forecast, you know that I have not been talking about highlighting forecasting anything to do with this presidential election. And it's really because the energy is being concentrated right now to each individual, and that awareness of the empowerment that we need to really establish within ourselves. And as I said, when I talk about empowerment, I certainly do not encourage everyone to use this to control others. This is really empowerment so that we can direct and create our lives and recognize that creative divinity that we have in each and every one of us that is very instrumental in creating all our experiences. And it's also for us to recognize and to continually be aware that we are always and forever connected to the source of well-being, and that everything we need will always be lovingly given to us from Spirit. We know that Mercury went direct on September 22nd. I do want to emphasize that until about October 7th, those energies are still in play, so just proceed with caution. If you're continually experiencing any sort of delays in any sort of way, miscommunications, just recognize it's all coming together. And sometimes delays do serve a greater purpose. With spirit, there really is no time, there is no delay in spirit. And many times when, if not all the time, when we allow ourselves to really have this heightened connection, this clear connection with spirit, we don't necessarily need to experience delays. The delays are very much a human condition. Although spirit, as I said, spirit has its own vibrational time frequency, if you will, and I use the term time for lack of a better phrase. And in spirit, everything's already happened. And it's really up to us individually how everything will unfold. Our next full moon is on October 16th. And that energy, there's somewhat of a volatile energy with the full moon, because the full moon is conjunct right next to the planet Uranus. Uranus brings great change. It brings upheavals. It brings awakenings, tremendous awakenings. And sometimes before we awaken, we do have the experience of some very unsettled energies coming to form. And it doesn't mean that we need to have these experiences. As long as we allow ourselves to remain grounded to the energy of the earth, if there are any unpleasantries which unfold in the outer world, it needs not have a direct influence in a negative way upon our well-being. As I said a little while ago about peacefulness, once we establish peacefulness within ourselves, doesn't matter what happens in the outside world. Things can crumble in the outside world, and we know within ourselves we are very, very, very peaceful. We can experience some unsettled activities as we continually go through this month. And again, it's a time of awakening, it's a time of awareness, it's a time for us to continually recognize we are all very much connected to one another, and we are very much one and a part of one another. We have a Mars-Pluto conjunction, if you will, a few days before the full moon. So that certainly energizes that sense of unsettlement. However, it can also generate a tremendous amount of creative energy that, when we demonstrate it in a very productive way, we can certainly offset any negativity. Remember, whenever we see the potential of something negative unfolding in the outer world, it's only a probability. When we look to the future, nothing is written in stone. So we look to the future, and when we see the potential of anything unsettling that will come to form, we can always recognize what we can do to offset it for ourselves, so that we need not allow any outer experience to influence or have an effect upon our well-being. On October 22nd, the sun moves into the sign of Scorpio. Scorpio is the sign of transformation. It's also the sign of empowerment, as I've been speaking of. And certainly we hear that between the time of October 31st, which is Halloween, and December 21st, which is the winter Yule, the winter solstice, it's a time when the veils between the worlds are very, very thin. And certainly, at any time during the year, the veil between the worlds can be very thin. However, because of the presence of the sign Scorpio, which deals with the other side, and connects us and allows us to recognize our connection with those who have transitioned into the spirit realm, this time is much more highlighted, and we're much more aware of how thin the veils between the worlds are. The sign of Scorpio also connects with the psychic faculties and our psychic abilities. I always encourage everyone to develop this quality within yourselves. Many times I speak of how I don't necessarily consider what I have to really be a gift, quote unquote. I demonstrate an ability that we all connect with, and that is very much a part of our human experiences. We're just not necessarily taught to recognize that part of ourselves. So as the sun transits the sign of Scorpio, and also on October 30th, we have a new moon in the sign of Scorpio. Allow yourself to use that opportunity to really to recognize your psychic sensitivity, your connection with the spirit realm. Also allow yourselves to recognize that element of empowerment that is very much instilled in each and every one of us. And one of the greatest potentials that are being offered to everyone at this time is to really recognize that empowerment within ourselves. I've been speaking about this for months. And now, as we go through these next few months, we're going to need to be that much more aware that we are very instrumental in creating all that we desire in our lives, and that we are also connected to that source of well-being, especially when we allow ourselves to recognize our connection to the spirit realm. Allow yourself to have these opportunities. The planet Neptune, who has been transiting the sign of Pisces, which Pisces is another water sign. Scorpio and Pisces, as well as Cancer, are the water signs. But at the time of this new moon, we have the new moon in Scorpio and Neptune in the sign of Pisces, allowing this free flow of psychic energy, if you will. So many of us will find ourselves accelerating and amplifying our awareness of this connection we have with the spirit realm. So with that said, we always have to be very aware to always ask Spirit for protection, and that we are always asked to be surrounded by love and protection, so that we are not influenced and affected by any dark energies that may surface themselves in the outer world. And we may be very much aware of how these dark energies will continue to try to thwart our efforts towards experiencing higher levels of consciousness. And the bottom line, this is all about us achieving our higher levels of consciousness on an individual basis. And then we generate that higher level of consciousness to the outer world. There will be an acceleration of an advancement of our psychic abilities. Many of us are experiencing an ascension towards higher vibrational levels of consciousness. This is all in part of the shifting consciousness overall that's happening right now, where we are taking a quantum leap from the third dimension to the fifth dimension. This is a higher vibrational spiritual experience. You know, as I said, today is September 29th, and earlier today we observed a horrific accident here in New Jersey, in Hoboken, New Jersey, in the Hoboken train station, where there's potentially mass fatalities and a mass loss of life that is taking place. You know, we may certainly continue to see large groups of people leaving the planet, but it does not mean that they won, that they have failed in any sort of way, that any sort of tragedy has been imbued upon them. And certainly we look at this from a spiritual perspective. You know, many individuals do choose to leave the planet at specific times because perhaps from a higher realms of consciousness, from those higher spiritual realms, they will have the experience of offering energies of healing and love to humanity and those of us who do remain here. I'm always suggesting that whenever we observe something horrible happening out in the world, to just step back a little bit, turn off the news, and just, you know, we've become aware, we know what's going on in the world. It doesn't mean that we need to bury our heads in the sand or live in a place where we're just not aware of what's going on in the world, but just for us to kind of step back a little bit, to go within, keep ourselves peaceful, because when we do that, when something bad happens in the world and we allow ourselves to just stay in a place of peacefulness and stay in a place of love and light, we can offset potentially anything else from happening in the world. And if something has happened in the world, we are actually generating healing and love to those experiences. Allow yourselves to remain peaceful as much as you can, especially as we go through these coming times. This new moon in the sign of peaceful Libra, the sign of loving Libra, is offering us this opportunity to establish this and create this within ourselves. Choose to do so, and you will observe how your own lives begin to change in very positive and very loving and very peaceful ways. Again, I'm spiritualist, psychic astrologer, and medium Sette. I will be returning to I will be returning to the mystical moon in November. I will be at both the Fort Myers and the Bonita stores. My schedule has been filling up very, very quickly. So if you'd like to meet with me personally, just contact the centers. They'll take care of you. They'll set up everything up for you. So until then, stay in the light. Always stay in a place of love. Stay peaceful. Namaste.